Minority Leader Seche Mensah indicated the current arrangement in Ghana's parliament, where, with the exception of the public accounts and the subsidiary legislation committees, all other committees are chaired by the majority, as the key reason for parliament's weak scrutiny in the consideration of key reports. Citing France as a case in point, Mensah said because a lot of the issues that pass through Parliament have financial implications. The chair of the Financial Committee in the French Parliament is a member of the minority. The question I am asking this morning is, what at all is the big deal? I'm joined over the telephone by Dr. Rashid Rahman. He is Executive Director for the Parliamentary Center. You're welcome to the program, Dr. Rahman.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Rahman,
let me just make a correction. It's the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, not the Parliamentary Center.
I see, African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. I'll keep that in mind. But what are your views on this call by Minority Leader in Parliament?
Well, I think the views are very interesting, and I would have loved to hear these views from the Minority Leader when he's Majority Leader, to see whether some of the things that he is calling for, those changes could be made when his party is in power. Having said that, I think they are very important views in terms of strengthening our parliament. But you can't make these changes without some serious reforms in parliament. Because our constitution talks about some of the committees that exist in our parliament, and they have their standing orders, and the standing orders talk about how these committees are put together, who chairs the committee, and the various compositions, the numbers in terms of what the majority numbers should be and what the minority numbers should be. All these are things that are part of their rules. And we can't just wake up without these reforms and say we should have these committees chaired by
Dr. Rahman, but what does this say about August House? For the Minority Leader in Parliament to admit that indeed documents are poorly scrutinized, Parliament is poorly performing because we have a largely majority taking care of business of the House, and so we can't have the House perform well because of that. Should it even be the case in the first place?
Well, I think that that is part of the problem. The fact that most of the committees in Parliament are chaired by the party that is in power is part of the problem. It's not the entire problem. I think the major problem is about the kind of institutional structures that we have within the Parliament to help very busy honorable members who, first of all, don't have offices to operate from. Secondly, they don't have assistants and research officers who work directly for them and support them and provide them information that they need to do their work and so on. All these are part of the bigger problem. Just having some of the committees chaired by the minority party would not entirely solve the problem. We need to look at all these institutional reforms. Currently, I think I've had the opportunity to say this on your network before. The Office of the Speaker has taken some steps with support from Star Ghana to set up what is called the Office of Scrutiny. Right now, we are working with officials from Parliament to set this office up. And I think when the office is up and running, one of the things that the office will be doing is to support all committees of Parliament when they are face-to-face with legislation, when they are face-to-face with some of these international financial and economic agreements that come before Parliament, so that office would do the proper due diligence and then provide the committee concerned with information that it needs before the issue is considered in the House.
So, Dr. Rama, does it mean that we cannot have, for lack of a better word, an honest majority that can differentiate the interest of the people from that of the ruling government?
Well, you see, this is part of the bigger problem that confronts us as a nation. You know, for a very long time, there's been a lot of calls for very clear separation of powers in terms of the various arms of government that we have in this country. And it interests you to know that sometimes when we talk about this separation, it is the very same MPs who sometimes call for an honest majority when they are in minority and so on. They are the same people who kick against separating Parliament clearly from the executive and giving Parliament all the powers that it needs. So we are faced with a situation whereby you need a Parliament where when people go in there, they go in there clearly as legislators and they do their work as legislators, devoid of any executive control and influences. But the current arrangement that we have, you have some members of Parliament wearing two hats. You don't know which one they support at which time. And some of these things create a lot of difficulties for us, particularly when they come face to face with some of these bills that they consider frequently.
But this must be a shame to come from the minority leader that indeed the legislative arm is performing poorly because of this, because we can't differentiate party interest from the interest of the larger Ghanaian people. If we want to, you don't want to react to that, I'll let you have the time.
No, you just go ahead.
If we want to, going forward, change this trend, what would it take?
Well, I think recently I heard that the Speaker has set up a committee that is supposed to help the institution look at how they can, in dealing with national issues, rise above partisan interests. I think if that committee does its work very well, and if both parties really show commitment and they buy into whatever the outcome of the work of that committee, then we are going to see a reformed Parliament. Until then, I think you have to remember is of politics. And usually they will put their partisan political interests first, unfortunately and regrettably. I mean, that is not supposed to be the case. I mean, I think what we are expecting as citizens is the fact that when they are faced with these national issues, they should side with the people first and not the parties that they represent in Parliament. And I have to be quick to say that, you know, whatever we see in our Parliament today, I mean, did not start today. I mean, I've had the occasion of, to work with all parties when they are in power and when they are in opposition and so on. And usually the conversations are different depending on where they sit. So that what we want is a very honest conversation. And that was why I started by saying it would have been interesting to hear some of these comments from Honorable Osechi Mensah when his party is in power and when they have the power to bring about some of these changes.
Finally, though, in making his point, he cited France as an example where the minority chairs the financial committee in the French Parliament. If we adopted that in our own case, will it change anything?
Well, I think it will change. It will change a lot of things. Citing the Public Accounts Committee, for instance, as the only, and then the subsidiary legislation committee. I mean, if you look at the work of the Public Accounts Committee, at least to a very large extent, we hear a lot of things and we see a lot of things during the public hearings and so on. And many people attribute it to the fact that all over the world, this is the case because the party other than the party in power chairs the Public Accounts Committee. In East Africa, a number of the parliaments have some of these very important committees beyond the Public Accounts Committee, chaired by opposition parties. And I think that they are showing a lot of effective oversight and so on. If we get to the day when a party in power would agree that the Finance Committee, which is one of the most important committees in any parliament, to be chaired by somebody not from the ruling party, then
Well, I think I lost Dr. Rahman there. Dr. Rashid Rahman is Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. And we've been talking some parliamentary matters.